Today sees the start of a brand new segment on the show called Ancient Ireland with Atlantis Eire Holistic and Celtic Spirit Magazine. Co-founder of the magazine, Aldo Jordan, and special guests will join me on the show each month to talk about all things ancient Ireland and much more. So our first guest for the segment is Shaman Declan Quigley. You're very welcome to the show, Declan.
Well, thank you very much, Rita. Great to be here.
Well, before we talk about today's topic, which is the pagans, can you tell us a bit more about the magazine?
The magazine, Atlantis Eire Magazine, it's a labour of love, really, for Aldo and Helen and myself, who has been involved from the beginning, So it's a gathering together of all things Celtic and all things spiritual. So, there are very, very broad topics involved in it, from everything from archaeology to spiritual healing, shamanism, the spiritual beliefs of the ancient Celts, and that type of thing. So it's very, very broad. But we also include a lot about, I suppose, more of the modern day holistic practices, Reiki and all those sorts of things. So it's a mixed bag. It's very much a labour of love and something we're very, very passionate about. It's our baby, really.
And where can people purchase it?
It's available all over the country. I think it's in something like 1,500 outlets throughout the country. I suppose the major ones would be in all the Eastern stores and all the Tesco stores. It's available in the north of Ireland as well, and a lot of those outlets. So it's around the country quite a bit,
It really is a fascinating read. It's great to see it doing so well so quickly.
Well, that's what we're thinking, Rita. There's definitely a place for this type of information. I think there's a huge rise in the interest in holistic practices and the ancient practices as well, Not only for the people on this island, but I think more abroad as well. We have a lot of readers in the US and Canada and the UK. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag, and something for everybody, pretty much, no matter what you're interested in,
And then, as well as the magazine, Aldo and Helen run Atlantis Eire, which is a shop in Castlebar, but it's also available online.
That's right, yes. They have a lot of products online. Anything of a holistic interest, a lot of shamanic items and things like rattles and drums and things like that there. But a lot of angel material, figurines and tarot cards, methods of divination, that type of thing. So there's a lot, that's all available online, atlantiseire.ie. There's also the shop, but there's the Holistic Centre as well, where there's regular holistic training and reading and that type of thing, So there's a lot going on in Atlantis.
Well, then, of course, you have the Irish School of Shamanic Studies as well. Could you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, yeah, that's myself and Aldo and Helen as well. Basically, I've been a shamanic practitioner for many, many years, and in the recent years, there's been a huge rise in people looking for this type of thing, this type of connection. And one of the things about the Irish School of Shamanic Studies is we teach you how to connect with spirit in terms of dialoguing. We can interact directly with spirit. It's called the Path of Direct Revelation, where we talk to our spirit guides, our power animals, and all in between for information, for one thing. And then for the likes of healing and that type of channel healing, to our clients. So what we're doing with the Irish School of Shamanic Studies is that we believe that everyone has this ability to connect with spirit. Everyone has a psychic sense, if you want to put it like that. Yeah. So we're teaching people how to do it and how to do it ethically and how to do it, reliably, more than anything, So we're around the country on several outlets. We're obviously in Atlantis and Castlebar, but we're also in Belfast. We're in Newbridge, County Kildare, and next week we'll be opening in New Ross and Wexford. So it's very exciting times for us, There's also an online course coming very shortly, in the next week, actually. That's going to be put out there. and we're looking at further afield, the US and Canada and places like that. So exciting times for
that is fantastic. It's just growing and growing all the time, isn't it?
It's absolutely it's taken legs completely, Rita. It's really flown. Obviously, I mean, we're tapping into a major interest in this type of field, and a major interest in spirituality in general. It's exciting times, as I say.
Well, I'm very excited because you're bringing a workshop to Belmullet for the very first time on June 7th.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Usually in Mayo we concentrate pretty much on Atlantis, but we thought we'd push it out a wee bit further. And this is the Irish School of Shamanic Studies, and we thought, for our first workshop in Belmullet, we would do something that's very core to shamanism, and that's the idea of ancestral healing. Ancestral healing, or family tree healing, as it's also called, is all about the energies that are passed down from generation to generation within a family. Now, a lot of that could be positive energy, a lot of it could be negative, but I guess what we're focusing on is the negative energies. Now, that can manifest in people in terms of addiction, in terms of mental health problems, depression. A lot of anger can be carried down the family line, that type of thing. So pretty much negative energies. So what we're doing is we're connecting with spirit, and we're journeying back to where that first entered the family line, that particular energy entered the family line. We're clearing that energy, and then that energy will then be cleared right down the family line to the youngest member, So it's pretty good workshop. It's interesting stuff, because we'll be looking at family trees and individually for the participants, and anyone coming along will be looking at their own family line and what the negative aspects are within that, and then obviously at the end of it, clearing that, So it'll be an interesting workshop.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, so I am. It's going to be fantastic, I'm sure.
Right.
Well, then, as I mentioned earlier, today's topic is the pagans. So can you explain to listeners, I know it's quite a broad topic, but could you explain what paganism is?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a hugely broad topic, I mean, paganism in itself is quite an individual type of spiritual practice, So there's lots of viewpoints on it, and I have no doubt that I will insult some people along the way here, but it is very individual,
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the pagans there who purely worship nature, and the seasons, and feel that there's a spiritual element to that. Paganism really, it's all pretty much nature based, but there's the other aspect of paganism that believe in various deities. Like, for instance, in this country and our ancient indigenous people, they believed in the likes of the Tuatha De Danann, and that would be the likes of Bridget, who later went on to be Saint Bridget, and other members like of the Tuatha De Danann, such as Cuchulainn and Finn McCool and that type of thing. And they believed that they were deities or gods and goddesses, And then there's another aspect of paganism that believes that there's spirit in everything. And I guess coming from a shamanic point of view, that's my understanding of things, that there's spirit in everything. And when I say spirit, I mean consciousness, and you can connect with that consciousness. For instance, to connect with yourself, I would go back to all your past lives and the very essence of your spirit or your soul or whatever you want to call it. And we can create healing and that, and in terms of the shamanic perspective on it. But in terms of paganism, there's spirit in everything, the trees, the mountains, the water, all that there. There's also another aspect of that believes all that is God as well. So everything is God, everything's a part of God. So again, it's very, very broad. And it's hard to pin down exactly what it is. It's very individual. And really, well, I think that's one of the beauties of it, and the fact that it's our own spiritual practice, there's no dogmas as such, we don't have to do this. And one of the greatest things for me as well is that, there's no pain, there's no punishment after death, So it's a lovely way of looking at the world, I think, the pagan path, And I think it's a path that it's been much maligned in the past, by various organizations and bodies and what have you. But it's a beautiful way of looking at the world, very love-based, very acceptance and life-affirming and that type of thing,
So would all pagans believe that the soul is reincarnated, or would some believe that when you die you go to the other world, or what would the beliefs be there?
Well, again, a mixed bag, it's individual, but I think generally there's an understanding. The spirit, on the point that the spirit goes back to the spirit family in the other world, as it was called in the old Celtic beliefs, and they would go back to their soul family and they would negotiate contracts and come back in to clear karma and that type of thing, So it was but I guess for the ancient pagans, there was a huge focus on the wheel of the year and the various festivals in the year. Very nature based. For instance, the summer solstice is coming up, and they would take that as a time of celebration and give thanks to their gods or their deities for the coming harvest. And as the year goes on, then they would look at blessings for their own harvest and their planting and all that type of thing, from their gods. So that's pretty much the way they would look at things, and they would be very focused on the energies of the seasons and the weather and the world we live in, really. Samhain would be the beginning of the Celtic calendar, the new year, if you want to call it that. And then that would move on then through the seasons or through the months. Again, the summer solstice, Lunasa, coming up to the winter solstice again. And it was very much based on the idea of birth, death, rebirth. And we're just, the trees grow and the flowers grow and they die and then are reborn again, So that's the way the ancient Celts would have looked at it. The way their life was, or their cosmology, that was tied in to the earth and their connection with the earth and the connection with each other and all that type of thing. So it's a very rich way of looking at the world and life and that type of thing.
And what are the various pagan paths then that people can follow?
Well, I guess as I was saying there's a lot of viewpoints on it. I mean there is the what they call the polytheism path, and that's the path where all the gods and goddesses are revered, and there's various rituals to them and that thing. Things like the gods and goddesses such as the Tuatha De Danann and that type of thing. Then there's just a nature-based path, that everything is a manifestation of God energy or goddess energy. Sacred feminine and that type of thing, and that's very much how they seen the earth and their environment that they were living in, that type of thing. And then there's again, it's all about spirit inhabiting everything, and giving reverence to that, But it is a very individual path as well, and it's a path that I think has to speak to you, Yeah. You have that connection with nature or that connection with the goddesses, and it's all appropriate, I think, in the general pagan path, Again, it's so broad, it's hard to give one definition for it,
Who then were the Druids?
Well, Druids were the ancient, I guess you could call them the professional classes in the Celtic world. They would have been the lawgivers, and they would have been the keepers of the ancient wisdoms. They would have been the medical professions. They would have been the political advisors, and they would have been the healers as well. I suppose the ancient version of our lawyers and doctors and police and all that type of thing. So they would have fulfilled that role, but they were very much looked upon as the leaders and the sort of directors of society, if you want to put it that way. There's very little known directly about the Druids because their particular way of recording their information or their practices was verbally. and the old Irish oral tradition, so there's very little written about them. I think we get a lot of our information about the Druids from the likes of the writings of Julius Caesar and the Roman Empire, and to be quite honest with you, a lot of that information I wouldn't imagine would be very accurate at all, because the Druids were very much seen as the enemy to the Romans, so they were trying to create a picture of a barbaric race, and they were very far from barbaric. They were very civilized. They had their own laws, Brehon law, and it was very sophisticated. Even I would imagine more sophisticated than our judiciary system now. And their whole way of life, was very sophisticated. But again, very little known about them. And the only thing we know about them that's actually written is through our ancient mythology, and the likes of the Ulster cycle and the Fenian cycle and that type of thing. That's where we get our main understanding, or accurate understanding of what the Druids were and what they were doing, what they were all about.
And then, what would have happened to the pagans then when Christianity came to Ireland? Because I'll tell you now, a few weeks ago, I heard something that was so ridiculous and killed me to keep my mouth shut. I know
that feeling.
Oh, it was a guy from the missions, and he was talking to a group of people, and it was around Paddy's Day, and he was saying how St. Patrick came to Ireland and he spread Christianity, and he drove the pagans, that's the story of the snakes being drove out of Ireland.
That's right,
it was the pagans. And he goes, how will I explain the pagans to you? And he goes, they were a sinning people. And I thought, well, if living your life good and treating others as you want to be treated yourself and being good to nature, if that's sinning, then hands up, I'm a sinner. Do you know what I mean?
Well, and me. And me. I think that's nonsense, it's really nonsense. Obviously, there were people there who wanted to spread their own particular philosophy, and at the expense of the current philosophy when they came to Ireland originally, But I think the attitude of the Christian church, and the Roman Empire to some degree, was to incorporate a lot of the deities of the ancient Celts and the ancient Druids, into their own. Like Saint Bridget, originally, obviously Saint Bridget was a Celtic goddess, Although it was to overtake and to win the hearts and minds, I suppose, of the Irish people at the time, the Celtic people. And it was quite brutal in ways, and I can't see, personally, any negativity in the focus on nature and the focus, and the work of the Druids and the work of the Celts at that time, I think, there are winners and losers in all these battles, and obviously the winners do write the history, and I think that's what we're listening to. I think the way of life and the Druidic practices and paganism is very life affirming. It's very encompasses all. You only need to look at the Brehon laws for that. Everybody was involved. There was no prejudice. No, for instance, women's place in the social organisation was equal to the male position, and that's not the case, with the Christian Church, and it's not the case, in our society today. So I certainly would be advocating a return to that way of looking at things, equality and a focus on nature and the beautiful things in nature and love between our connection.
And I think the older you get as well, you take an interest more in these kinds of things, don't you?
Well, I think so. I mean, reaching my age now, I think I'll be thinking, well, what's next? What's coming next?
Yeah.
And this absolutely speaks to me, I suppose, the pagan path, yes. But the structure of it and the understandings of it, the philosophy of it, it really is. It makes complete sense to me,
Yeah.
And as you say, as you get older, you get a sense of those who are trying to control and those who are trying to take over for their own ends, and you tend to maybe rule that out,
Finally, Declan, before I let you go, could you tell me a bit about the modern pagan?
Well, the modern pagan, again, they would follow pretty much the same type of practices, and it is very individual. Well, it's very nature based. It's very focused on the aspects of nature and the changing seasons and our place within that. I suppose that, a big part of paganism now is Wicca, or witchcraft. And again, there's something else that was demonized, by the church. And what you could call the witches, or what the Christians called the witches, were herbalists. They were healers.
Yeah.
They were women mostly that were in connection with nature and could channel the positive energies of nature. Of course, that was a threat, to other religions, we'll say. And that's pretty much where the modern pagan is coming from, It's a return to that understanding, very, very much, and again, polytheism or animism, again, spirit in everything. There's a great belief in that among modern pagans and their connection to the world and nature,
Well, that's it, because when you look up now modern paganism online, it all comes back to Wicca.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Well, Wicca is fairly modern and such, but witchcraft, or the idea of witchcraft is, it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, and of course Hollywood and all that there have, again, demonized the whole witches and made them women with, big noses and warts and all that sort of thing, which, that's just control and operation, But the real witches were in connection with nature and the beautiful energies of nature and channeling that for healing, not for any negative purposes as such.
Well, Declan, it's been absolutely fascinating, as always, talking to you, and I cannot wait for our first workshop in Balmullet, and that is, for anyone listening, the 7th of June, and if you want to take part, just contact myself, Declan, or Aldo on Facebook.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it myself.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Declan.
Not at all. It's been a pleasure, Rita. Thank you very much.